I know many of our listeners are aware of the website and the book Mad in America, written by Robert Whitaker, who was a guest on this podcast. I think it was our 5th episode. And yeah, I couldn't agree more that that's such a fantastic resource. I think the book Anatomy of an Epidemic might be one of the best go-to resources if you really want to get a clear sense of the historical evolution of psychiatric drugs, and then the evidence that we have for their effects, for their
Right.
positive and negative effects. And what's interesting too, so I want two things. I want to make sure to ask you about your experience of ECT, which, in case people don't know, stands for electroconvulsive so-called therapy. And but right before I ask you about that, I just wanted to make a comment that it's always interesting to me when we talk about the percentage of people who are benefiting from psychiatric drugs and the percentage of people who are not. Just to look at those percentages, it's extremely alarming to see the rate of people who are primarily experiencing the adverse effects. It's alarming. And then also, though, when you look at the percentage of people who are benefiting and for whom it's working, we really always, I think, have to ask the question, what exactly do we mean by working? What exactly are the advantages of this? And often what we realize is that for the person to say that it's working, they just mean that they feel better than they did before they started taking the drug. But that doesn't mean that the person is completely flourishing. It doesn't mean that the person is actualizing their potential, that they are at their best, that their mind is sharp, that their faculties are completely online and fully functional and reliable. It doesn't mean that they are as healthy as can be. It never means that. And so I always think that that's important to point out. And while I know that there are people listening right now who currently have this drug, exerting its effects in their brain as they listen, and I'm not trying to make a person feel ashamed of that at all. Like, I agree we should never pill shame, as they say. But I just think it's so important to understand the true nature of what's happening, which is that there's a drug in your system. And I think that the best we could say about the benefits of these drugs is that they might heighten the floor, but they also lower the ceiling on your well-being. And I understand if people are in just complete despair and just paralyzing depression or overwhelming anxiety, some type of pharmaceutical agent that's going to heighten the floor on that and make you feel not quite so horrible. I see why that's appealing, and I see why people do that. And I support people using chemical support to kind of heighten the floor of their well-being. But it's really problematic. And what people, I think, don't realize is just how much it also lowers the ceiling, just how much it limits how often they'll belly laugh, just how much it limits the sharpness of their mental faculties, and how much it'll limit how good of a mood they really can experience, how fulfilled they'll feel, how rich life will feel, how sensitive they'll be to the beauty of life and things like that. So I always feel like it's very important to point that out, that even when we acknowledge the advantages of psychiatric drugs, we have to qualify that by saying that it's not that good. They're not going to make you, like, all those things I just described, completely flourishing.
Right.
But
Well,
I
I
understand if
think
it's better than what you've been going through, and I get that.
I think the other thing is that, for I wanted when I was trying to sell this book to agents, I had to really try and convince them that there was a market for the book.
Mm,
And what I came up with was the percentage of people that the drugs work for.
mhm,
And I said, the audience is people like me. The audience is people that try drug after drug after drug, and they get no relief, and they feel worse and worse and worse over a period of time. That's the audience that I'm trying to reach and say, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's maybe maybe you could consider this. I don't want to try and give answers to anybody, because not everybody can manage to find their way, find another way besides the pharmaceutical way. But if you're not being helped by it, maybe my story and some of the research that I provide could help you
Right.
start to investigate it for yourself.
Right. Right. Well, did your book get picked up by a publishing agency?
No, I I
Self-publishing?
self-published it.
Which is it's just so interesting. I mean, honestly, your argument is very strong, and if we're strictly thinking in a business manner, these publishing companies are missing out on profit. I mean, there really is an appetite for these types of books, and I think that appetite is growing quickly.